everyone, I'm Sarah Bezdek, and the title of my presentation is Struggling Secondary Readers and the Benefits of Adapted Reciprocal Teaching. So, to start off explaining my topic of research, I thought it was important to define what reciprocal teaching is. And reciprocal teaching is a comprehension strategy that was originally developed in 1986 by two women, one by the name of Amarine Palskanar and the other by the name of Anne Brown. When they originally created reciprocal teaching, they tailored it around 4 strategies that can be used to help students better comprehend text. And those 4 strategies are listed on the bottom of this slide in the green circle. So reciprocal teaching has students practice all of these Fab 4 strategies, those being predicting, questioning, summarizing, and clarifying. To understand more of what this strategy looks like in the classroom, it follows this gradual release of responsibility model, and you can see a picture of how that process works over on the right of this slide. So it starts with teachers having responsibility. So teachers will model each of those Fab 4 strategies, possibly reading a text with students and then doing a think aloud to model how to make a prediction, how to ask clarifying questions, what pieces of information would belong in a summary. So very direct instruction that starts with teacher modeling. And then you can see as that triangle narrows up, teacher responsibility becomes less, and then the triangle of student responsibility is upside down to show that as the teacher responsibility shrinks, student responsibility increases. Once the strategies have been modeled and students have been allowed to practice them through guided practice, as well as partner practice, then they are assigned one of the 4 roles and are asked to complete that role independently. So if you look at the picture on the bottom, it shows 4 students in a circle with a piece of text between them. And that's what reciprocal teaching looks like once students have learned how the process has worked and have become proficient in using each of the Fab 4 strategies. Each of these 4 students would be assigned 1. So one student will be predicting, 1 will be clarifying, 1 summarizing, and 1 questioning. They will have read a common text, and then they meet in a group and share the ideas that they develop based on their role and discuss and would come to a better understanding of the text collaboratively. The teacher at this point would be more of a facilitator and would step in when discussions maybe aren't as deep or analytical as they should be. Reciprocal teaching is not a linear process, so if the teacher would notice that students need to go back to direct instruction because they're still struggling with a particular strategy, such as summarizing, then that instruction would become more teacher-focused again and then go back to student-led. So it goes back and forth. Why reciprocal teaching? Well, we all know that we have lots of students who struggle with comprehension, so we do need some kind of strategy to help fill in those gaps. Lots and lots of research have been done on reciprocal teaching, and there are many benefits from it. And across the top of the slide here, you can see those listed in the arrows. So it's been shown to increase metacognitive awareness, helping students to realize, like Slater and Horstman say, where their learning breakdowns are, how to fix them. They get this strategy toolbox that they can use and pull out when needed. So it's not just knowing the strategies, but knowing when they should use them. That, oh, I'm struggling to comprehend this text because it has a lot of difficult vocabulary in it. I need to ask myself some clarifying questions, figure out what these words mean, and that will fix up my comprehension breakdown. So that's part of the goals of reciprocal teaching as well, is that students learn how to learn better. In doing this, then that leads to increased confidence. Students believe that they can read and they can understand because they have all these tools and resources that they can use to help them when they are stuck, instead of just being stuck and saying, well, I don't know how to fix it, I'm just going to give up and put the text down, which many of us have probably heard students say before. This does help to create a more inclusive environment in the classroom because everybody is working together to come to an understanding of a shared text. Because students are working in these groups of 4 and each has a singular role that contributes to the whole, they become more of a team, and they feel involved and that their contributions matter and are helping their peers learn. And then ultimately, all of that leads to improved reading comprehension. And you can see some of the statistics down below for that. That Strickland found that the reading levels could increase as much as 1 to 2 grade levels in just 3 to 6 months, which is a lot, a short amount of time. Some limitations are apparent in reciprocal teaching. When I was looking through the research, it takes a lot of time to get reciprocal teaching going and to implement it effectively. Even though we would assume that our secondary students are coming to us with the ability to summarize, to ask clarifying questions, make predictions, the research has not shown that students do have these skills. Maybe they have touched on them, but they're not proficient in using them in ways that will aid their comprehension. So it does take a lot of teacher-focused direct instruction to teach the Fab 4 strategies before they can fully be implemented by students and before reciprocal teaching can actually happen. According to my research, that can take, as Fisher and Bray said, up to 20 lessons to get students ready. Williams said it took his students about 2 months when he tried it out. So it is a significant chunk of time. However, because there are a lot of benefits to it, that time does seem to be worth it. If you take that time at the beginning of the year, your students can benefit towards the end. Another aspect of timing is just preparing teachers. Teachers need lots of coaching, lots of professional development training to learn how to teach the 4 strategies. How do you do a think aloud that will help students learn how to predict? How do you know that students are proficient? How do you step back and facilitate and let your classroom be student-led? Some teachers have a hard time with that shift, so it does take a good chunk of time to get teachers on board and to fully prepare them to implement reciprocal teaching. And if it's not taught well, then it won't work well, and those benefits will not happen. Other limitations that led me to my specific thesis has to do with the fact that reciprocal teaching originally was designed just for students who were struggling with comprehension. However, we have a lot of students in class that struggle with both decoding and comprehension. And probably because our classrooms are more inclusive than they were in 1986 when this strategy was first developed. And so we need to find a way to meet the needs of all of our students, which means that reciprocal teaching needs to be adapted in some way to allow those students that are struggling with decoding to get past that hurdle in order to start practicing the Fab 4 comprehension strategies. So that led me to my thesis statement, which is printed here, that reciprocal teaching is an effective strategy for helping secondary students to improve their reading comprehension skills and for helping teachers to create more inclusive classroom environments. However, further research is needed to learn the best methods of adapting this strategy to meet the needs of all types of learners. So I wanted to make sure, because I do teach in a co-taught classroom, that I was able to find ways to adapt this strategy in order to make it successful for all the students I teach. So it's significant to me as a topic because I teach literacy, so I'm all about reading and reading comprehension. As I said, I teach in a co-taught classroom, so I have lots of students with IEPs and with those extra struggles. So I really love the idea of reciprocal teaching, but I also need to find ways to modify it to allow everyone in my classroom to benefit. And I feel like that's significant to others because a lot of secondary students have comprehension struggles. And comprehension doesn't help just in the literacy classroom, but in lots of other subjects, as well as careers outside of school. And this chart here just talks more about how many students with those extra needs, IEP kids, intellectually disabled students, are in regular classrooms, in the gen ed classrooms. And you can see most of them are in those classrooms 80% or more of their day. So their accommodations for these students do need to be considered. So that just kind of sums that up as well. That, again, conventional reciprocal teaching is no longer meeting the needs of all of our students since our classrooms are becoming much more diverse than they used to be. So some possible adaptations that can be made to reciprocal teaching, first of all, is tape-assisted reciprocal teaching, which helps to overcome those decoding struggles that students may have because they're able to listen to a pre-recorded reading of whatever the shared text is. So they're not struggling just to decode the words. They're able to listen to the words and focus on using those comprehension strategies to better understand it rather than spending all of their time just deciphering the words. Another method of adaptation is using what's called metacognitive screencasting. And this is where students would do something similar to what I'm doing right now. And they would record themselves reading and giving their own think-alouds, modeled after the think-alouds that a teacher would present during direct instruction. And then they could share these recorded screencasts, these recorded think-alouds with each other. And then those lower level students could hear how their peers who may be better comprehenders, how they work with text, how they think about text. So it starts providing those lower level students with more, comprehension strategies to put into their toolboxes, and just to learn what good readers do when they read. So the implications of this, you can see kind of this bucket of things. So if we put all these ingredients, all these little circles together, so if you've got the Fab 4 strategies, if you have a student-centered atmosphere in your classroom, use the gradual release of responsibility, collaborative learning, differentiate that instruction, model as a teacher, all of that will lead to improved reading comprehension and then that feeling of an inclusive classroom environment. And that led me to some questions. So my big question is up at the top there, where I was really trying to answer what impact do reciprocal teaching modifications have on student performance on tested reading comprehension. That's where my focus first started, is how can this strategy help my students to better comprehend? And how do I need to adapt it to make sure that it's helping all of my students comprehend better? But then that also led me to think of some kind of sub-research questions, which are the two on the bottom. First one, how does adapting reciprocal teaching impact students' confidence and their ability to comprehend text? And then the second one, what impact do reciprocal teaching modifications have on students' perceptions of inclusion in the classroom? I like these sub-questions because I think they discuss other factors related to comprehension, just motivating students to try because they're feeling more confident. They're not feeling that helplessness that they've felt about reading tasks in the past where they've struggled, that they'll start seeing that they can do it. And that in itself will lead to better comprehension because they're putting more effort and time into reading tasks. And I think if they feel more included and valued, if that's their perception, that they belong in this classroom and what they say matters, then they're more likely to be engaged and be involved. And that will also lend itself to improved comprehension. And then we just end with my references, and you are welcome to check into those and do some more research on your own on these topics. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation.